Starting out red with Phoenix Chick. Red for a 1/1 creature Phoenix with flying and haste. Phoenix Chick can't block. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay red. If you do, return Phoenix Chick from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking with a +1/+1 counter on it. Okay, I mean, that seems probably fine-ish, I think. This is pretty good with Thundering Raiju, since it comes back, you can stack the trigger so that it comes back with the counter before Raiju resolves and counters amongst creatures for the purposes of damage. Got flying and haste, so you play it on turn 1 and it pokes your opponent. No, I don't think this is as good as Kumano, but I do think this is better than most of Red's other 1-drops. Like, this seems better than Rabbit Battery, right? I don't really think this is very much in the way of discard fodder, because, like, a trigger that only happens when you attack with 3 or more creatures is creeping close to win more territory. The fact that this is just kind of not an embarrassing 1-drop makes that fine? Yeah, I mean, I think my gut instinct is to rate this slightly below, to rate this definitely below Kumano and slightly above Rabbit Battery. And I think probably better than the red 2/1 Vampire. So I do think that probably makes this playable in a mono-red deck, at least in the context of Standard. Gets free value off Fable. I don't know that you ever play this in a deck with Fable. Most aggressive decks, Fable just isn't fast enough to be meaningful, and they also generally don't have the mana sinks. Where's the 1 mana, 1/1 Vamp Blood Token fit? I would say definitely not the same lists, because that's not really a card that I think sees play in aggro, per se. Not traditional creature beatdown aggro. It sees play more in, like, red-black sacrifice artifact synergy decks. Yeah, once you look at Explorer or anything else, I think you start to get better options for red, but in the context of Standard, I could see this seeing play. Next up, Shivan Devastator. Red and an X for a 0/0 creature dragon Hydra with flying and haste. Shivan Devastator enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. I don't think this is very good. I mean, I guess it's flexible. How good is flexibility? It's above rate for a flying haste creature, I guess. Takes 3 mana before it's better than a Phoenix Chick. Premier removal is cut down. And takes a lot of mana for this thing to not die to cut down. Like, I think once you're playing 4 mana for this, it's not embarrassing. But this doesn't seem exciting as a 2-drop or a 3-drop. It's a big Lava Axe that keeps Lava Axing? No, Lava Axe. This is worse than Lava Axe. Lava Axe does 5 damage. It's more flexible than Lava Axe. This is the cure to mono red flooding out. Probably not. The cure to mono red flooding out is to kill your opponent more reliably, and that means not playing cards on turn 3 that are 2/2 flyers with haste. We can probably do better than that on 3. You can't flood out with mono red if your opponent dies. Yeah, I don't know. There is a value to flexibility and mana sinks that means that this has some niche that it could hypothetically play. My guess, not having played a lot of creature-based aggro decks, when I've played Burn, it's typically been spell-based Burn. I don't feel like they are decks that value flexibility to this extent over efficiency, and this does not feel like an efficient card. Next up, this is a common, but it's got a lot of text. Viashino Branch Rider. Red for a 1/1 creature Viashino Warrior with kicker, 2 and a green, haste. If Viashino Branch Rider was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters. Never mind. Unplayable. They tricked me by putting a bunch of text on a bad card. Electrostatic Infantry. 1 and a red for a 1/2 creature dwarf wizard with trample. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Electrostatic Infantry. This is the part where I'd like to just defer this evaluation to Holy Diva. See, to me, this looks like a more interesting card than a lot of alternatives because it comes with Trample innately, and it continues to get bigger over time. Being a player who is willing to admit that blue-red prowess aggro is the least played archetype of my entire Magic career, it is entirely possible that Kiln Fiend might be a better card than this, by virtue of it's not about long-term value in growing your creature in that archetype, it's about make opponent dead this turn. That versus 10th District Legionnaire. I gotta imagine 10th District Legionnaire is probably worse. No, probably better. 10th District Infantry has haste and also scries. And also is bigger on the front of it. Probably play both? I don't know. I'm not sure you play both. Red, White, Heroic, and Pioneer already has its creature count capped out, essentially. And your 2-drops are 10th District Infantry, 10th District Legionnaire, Dreadhorde Arcanist, and the Illuminator that connives and has double strike. I think all of those 2-drops are better for that specific deck than this. Illuminator Virtuoso. Yeah, that's the other 2-drop. For standard... I don't know. I don't know if we have the tools for like a blue-red prowess style aggro deck or a red-white heroic style aggro deck to exist in standard. I'm uncertain on that. Maybe we do? We have Shock and Lightning Strike, I guess, but neither of those is actually like... Well, Shock is kind of a card that gets played in blue-red prowess style decks traditionally, but Lightning Strike is not necessarily mana efficient enough for them. You also have Strangle. Yeah, but you don't want to play Strangle in those kind of decks because Strangle can't go face. You'd just much rather play Shock. You'd probably much rather play Lightning Strike, too. Ancestral Anger is legal. That's true. That's a pretty okay start, I guess. Slip Out the Back I don't think is the kind of card you'd want to play in this style of deck, since it doesn't actually attack the opponent. It just protects your cards. Oh, the blue-red Alchemy deck is also losing the Mentor's Guidance that just recently got buffed too, isn't it? So that hurts that deck quite a bit. Consider plus Letter Shredder. Yeah, Letter Shredder isn't actually like good at being an aggressive card in the same way that something like Electrostatic Infantry wants to be an aggressive card, I feel like. Letter Shredder is like a weird card that's kind of jack of all trades, master of none, requires you to be a deck that wants to be capable of pivoting between aggression and defense, depending on the matchup. Whereas Electrostatic Infantry, to me, looks like a card that wants to be in a deck that is very linearly aggressive. Yeah, I don't know. Not to say this is bad, just to say that I'm definitely not the person with the tools to figure out where it's good, or if it's good. This is another one of those cards with a lot of text that's an uncommon. 1 in a red for an instant, Fires of Victory. Kicker, 2 and a blue. If this spell was kicked, draw a card. Fires of Victory deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of cards in your hand. No, never mind. Oh, wait. Wait. I was going to say this sucks, but actually wait. This is fascinating. Land drop, cast this spell. If I've mulliganed once and I'm on the play, and I'm going to kill my opponent's 2-drop. How many cards in hand do I have? So I went down to 6. Play land. Is this good? 5? This seems good. This is most certainly not a mono red card, but in my mind, this is like a blue control card that just happens to be red. You don't always have cards in hand, sure. But if this is a good removal spell on the first 4 turns of the game, then I think this is actually interesting to me. At 5 mana, this starts to be actively card advantage. Like, if this is 5 mana, kill a 3-drop, draw a card, then that's just like actively a way control starts to pull ahead. How good is blue-red control? I do not know. But I commented earlier that I was surprised that we were actually lacking a good Doomblade for the first couple of turns, and that white was looking appealing as a control color because Fateful Absence was like the premier on-curve removal spell. This is also a good on-curve removal spell. Galvanic Iteration is still legal. We aren't certain whether there is going to be much in the way of cards that take advantage of it other than Big Score, but the biggest weakness of Galvanic as like a game plan was that Galvanic was bad against Go Blank, and Go Blank is going away. So we could potentially get back to the point where it's reasonable to play like 4 copies of Galvanic in your main as purely card advantage, and then 4 copies of Big Score. That's not unreasonable. Hullbreaker Horror... Oh, wait. Hullbreaker Horror also starts to look better if there are not a lot of removal spells that hit it, necessarily. Also, how highly do you rate Liliana the Veil in this format? Pretty much unplayable. I think that card's, like, actively not good. I'm glad I looked at this and kept reading it. I think this card might actually be good, and I actively want to experiment with it. This card's really cool. I like this design a lot. Alright, what else do we got? Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike is a card. It does Lightning Strike things. Oh my goodness, this is a common? Wow. Rest in peace, Limited. The comparison to Flunk. Flunk is like the exact opposite of that Fire's Victory card, where Flunk is a removal spell that gets better later in the game and is bad on, or worse on the first couple of turns, whereas Fire's Victory is a removal spell that is most unconditional on the first few turns of the game, and then later becomes more likely to not kill big creatures, but has the option to become card advantage while killing smaller creatures. So I think that it's pretty functionally different from Flunk, but my guess is also that it's probably stronger than Flunk. Well, Lightning Strike, very good. Make me happy. If I play Sealed, I will try to open lots of Lightning Strikes. Next up, Rada's Firebrand, 1 and a red for a 3/1 creature human warrior. Alright, that's a playable-ish stat line. Oh wow, we lose Spikefield Hazard, don't we? Whenever Rada's Firebrand attacks, target creature defending player controls with power less than Rada's Firebrand's power can't block this turn. Oh! Okay. So don't try to do any of this 1/1, 2/4 blocker nonsense. Domain, 5 and a red. Rada's Firebrand gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each basic land type among lands you control. Activate only once each turn. Huh. Okay. This is an interesting option. Does die to cut down. That's true. But not embarrassing. I don't think this is playable unless you're going for a domain archetype, and I don't know how to make a domain archetype that's aggressive work. I mean, I guess if you were playing like red-white and were willing to play... No, you can't play off-color basics with the portal, can you? Because it only taps for the color that you name. So you really can't name an off-color very easily. I mean, Kamano into this isn't embarrassing. I don't know if this is better than most other 2-drop options, necessarily. I don't think this is bad. I don't know what Red's other 2-drop options look like, but this isn't, like, something that... I mean, it's definitely got to be worse than the 2-mana 2/2 with haste that can kicker ETB, multi-kicker ETB to, like, cast spells from your graveyard. Got to be worse than that, I think. But, yeah, I don't know. Not embarrassing. Rundvelt Horde Master. 1 and a red for a 1/1 creature goblin warrior. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. Whenever Rundvelt Horde Master or another goblin you control dies, exile the top card of your library. If it's a goblin creature card, you may cast that card until the end of your next turn. So goblins gets card advantage, I guess, is the idea. Installation from a board wipe. And a 2-mana lord. So, like, I guess this is interesting. What do we think? Did we miss Muxus at all? Anybody? I don't know. This seems like a card that's probably strong. Tribal aggro is not my forte. Not really something I know very much about, but I'm sure if you have a Goblins tribal aggressive deck, that is a card that you could absolutely consider playing. Goblins is super strong and historic? Is it? I mean, Muxus was a combo deck that existed at one point, but lately hasn't really been played at all. But maybe Rundvelt Horde Master gives it a boost. Don't think Muxus wants it because you need the haste more than the Lord effect and the acceleration. I mean, bear in mind that Muxus does absolutely want redundant effects that allow it to play a resource advantage game against decks that have adequate answers to the Muxus combo thing. It's part of why Snoop is so strong for that deck. And it's part of why at some point they started playing like 3 to 4 copies of the Horn that provides card advantage by potentially drawing a goblin every turn and also reducing the mana cost of all your goblins. So Rundvelt Horde Master in that sense, as far as like fixing some of the weak matchups for Muxus decks, could potentially fill a role. Anyhow, Smash to Dust. 1 and a red for a sorcery. Choose 1. Destroy target artifact, destroy target creature with Defender. Oh, again, I don't know if this would be better or worse if I read more of these cards ahead of time, but like, it's got a bunch of modes. That made me think it was good. But no, all these modes are useless. I mean, deal 1 damage to each creature your opponent controls has historically been interesting at 1 mana or at instant speed. Sometimes, but yeah. Meh. Twinferno, 1 and a red instant. Choose 1. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Okay. Target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. Yeah. Again, I assume lots of words in an uncommon means that it's interesting, but nothing about that is interesting. Yodia? We'll go with Yodia declares war. 1 and a red, Saga, read ahead. First chapter, create a 0/2 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying named Ornithopter. Yosha? No, while that could be correct, I can't play against a card that is all about robots and artifacts and be picturing the idea of OSHA declaring war on me. Like, 1 too many violations, now is the time for the revenge of Yosha? Well, it certainly leave me giggling every time I saw the card. Okay. First chapter, create a 0/2 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying named Ornithopter. Second chapter, tap any number of untapped artifacts you control. When you do, Yosha declares war, deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker. Okay. Third chapter, up to 1 target artifact you control becomes a creature with base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. It's kind of weird. Like, this doesn't seem good on turn 2. Because turn 2, make a bad Thopter, ping something for 1, then turn a Thopter into a 4/4 for a single turn. Does not sound like a card that is worth a card. You can read ahead, but in order for it to do damage, it taps things. So you can't, like, play this and remove something and be aggressive. And ensouling something for one turn also doesn't sound particularly useful. I don't see it. Nothing about how these abilities line up seem like they add up to being worth a 2-mana card to me. Not much. If it didn't require you to tap the artifacts, I'd be a lot more interested in it, because then it would potentially have a role as a removal spell in an aggressive aggro deck, or an aggressive artifact deck. But it does not look like that. Alright, this is not good, but I guess let's look at it. Heirloom Battle Hymn. 2 and a red for an instant with kicker white. Heirloom Battle Hymn deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If this spell was kicked, you gain 4 life. If this did 3 damage and gained 3 life for 2 mana with kicker white, I would potentially be interested. I think 3 mana is a little too expensive. What's our current deal for? Apparently Victory Celebration. But yeah, I guess let's look at Instance Legal and Future Standard. What do we have that is an alternative at 3 mana? Bloodline Culling is -5/-5. Broker's Charm is a fight. Calling a Professional does 3 and goes face, and prevents damage prevention. Endless Detour is just an actual removal spell for 3 mana. Maestro's Charm deals 5 damage. Murder is murder. Riveteer's Charm is an edict. Riveteer's Charm remains good. Rending Flame does 5 damage to a creature. Seismic Wave does 3 damage to a creature, and probably has more utility against other decks. Void Rend kills things. Yeah, I think by and large I would prefer Seismic Wave against the average aggressive deck than Heirloom Battle Hymn, kicker or no kicker. Yeah, true that we don't have any good control color triomes to make red-white fixing easy either. Not the biggest draw to Heirloom Battle Hymn. Keldon Flamesage. 2 and a red for a 2/3 creature human shaman with Enlist. Whenever Keldon Flamesage attacks, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is Keldon Flamesage's power. You may exile an instant or sorcery card with mana value X or less from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Huh. This is interesting. Not necessarily in the sense that I would ever want to play this fairly, but how close is this to Velomachus? The answer is it's not, but turn 3 Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, turn 4 discard Keldon Flamesage, attack with your 2/2, post-combat reanimate Keldon Flamesage with Invoke Justice, have a 6/7 Keldon Flamesage. When Keldon Flamesage attacks, you get to look 6 cards deep for other cool cards. Enlist only adds power, but Invoke Justice... No, it's not Invoke... What is it? Isn't it Invoke Justice? Am I wrong on that name? Yeah, it's Invoke Justice. Invoke Justice is the 5 mana quadruple white reanimate that distributes 4+1/+1 counters among creatures. So it turns Keldon Flamesage into a 6/7. Yeah, it can Invoke Justice for more Flamesages. Heck, Invoke Justice could even hit a Fable of the Mirrorbreaker if they had killed it already. I don't think that's good, but I want it to be. I don't know. This is interesting, but it ultimately doesn't really seem like it gets there on its own, and I don't think it really gets there with help either. Yeah, not having haste and just the stats not quite being there for 3 mana and not doing anything when it ATBs. It's kind of medium. Kind of deeply medium. Ooh, okay. Next up. Gets cut down. Not if you invoke Justice it doesn't. Squee Dubious Monarch. 2 and a red for a 2/2 legendary creature goblin noble with haste. Whenever Squee Dubious Monarch attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. You may cast Squee Dubious Monarch from your graveyard by paying 3 and a red and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard rather than paying its mana cost. So this actually seems kind of interesting to me. There have been times where we busted control mirrors, where we attempted to get edges in control mirrors by playing Legion Warboss, and this seems mostly just better than Legion Warboss for that purpose. It's Legion Warboss, the very, very good control mirror breaker that also has escape. That's, like, pretty interesting. I don't know whether or not I'm, like, horrifically interested in this card outside of its role in control mirrors, where you're likely to have boarded out a lot of removal. This has to attack where boss didn't. Yeah, but control mirrors don't really care about that. Your opponent doesn't have blockers in control mirrors, typically. In those mirrors where you were playing Legion Warboss, you were attacking the Legion Warboss every time that you could. Wandering Emperors around Ruin are fun. I guess in the sense that it can exile Squee. But also, you can play Squee before your opponent can play Wandering Emperor. If the best case scenario for the opponent is that you turn 3 Squee, they turn 4 Wandering Emperor downtick on Squee, and then Squee kills Wandering Emperor with the 1/1 token, I think that still sounds kind of fine. Probably. Less good scenario is that you play Squee and attack, and somehow you're casting Squee at the point where your opponent already has Wandering Emperor mana up, and then they downtick on Squee and uptick on the next turn, so your Squee's left behind 1/1 isn't threatening to kill the Emperor. It's definitely interesting. I will probably put this in the sideboard of a deck at some point. That said, I don't know whether Squee really is better than Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Oh, but you know what Squee is really interesting with? Squee potentially plays very well with Make Disappear. Having random 1/1 goblin tokens sitting around that you don't mind sacrificing is not a bad synergy. So potentially you could be playing like 4 Fable of the Mirror Breakers to Squee if you were going to be attempting to play 3 drops that gain an edge in control mirrors. Alright, I'm not entirely against testing out Squee at some point. That said, playing like 6 tap-out sorcery speed spells in draw-go control mirrors sounds like a annoyingly efficient way of making them not draw-go control mirrors. And that's quite a bit less fun. Alright, next up, Defiler of Instinct. 2 red for a 4/4 creature Phyrexian Kavu with first strike. As an additional cost to cast red permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost red less to cast. If you paid life this way, this effect reduces only the amount of red mana you pay. Whenever you cast a red permanent spell, Defiler of Instinct deals 1 damage to any target. So, of all of the Defilers, this feels like kind of by far the best one. 4 mana 4/4 first strike is not a completely inherently embarrassing stat line. And the fact that you can then immediately play a 1-drop in a deck that you're probably incentivized to have 1-drops in already, while also getting to either ping your opponent directly or perhaps even ping a creature? Does Mono Red play this? I don't know. I mean, maybe? I don't think this would be a 4 of, because I think you probably still play Thundering Raiju before this, but I could hypothetically see this being like a 2 of. Depends on how exactly you want to orient your curve, really. Better than Devastator? Yeah, I think this is probably better than Devastator. Mind you, again, Devastator has flexibility, but I don't think Devastator has flexibility in the sense that it kind of sucks to play as a 2-drop or a 3-drop ever. So, like, realistically, Devastator's kind of a 4-drop, more like a 5-drop before it actually becomes good. And I don't know. I don't like that. I don't think that's good. I think Defiler of Instincts actually being a good card, even if it has to be a 4-drop to be a good card, is just better than Devastator. I kind of dig it. I think that's where I'm at. Next up, Jaya Fiery Negotiator. 2 red for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Jaya. +1, create a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess. -1. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. I thought that ability was a +1 previously. -2. Choose target creature and button controls. Whenever you attack this turn, Jaya Fiery Negotiator deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures to that creature. Okay, that's a lot of text. -8. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a red instant or sorcery spell, copy it twice. You may choose new targets for those copies. I like this card a lot more when the second ability was a +1 in my brain. I mean, upticking to 5 while making a blocker for a 4-mana Planeswalker is pretty alright, I suppose. The -2 and the -8 are basically irrelevant. This is mostly just upticking to make creatures and downticking to make card advantage happen. I don't know. It doesn't seem impactful enough to be like a mid-range card, and it doesn't seem fast enough to be an aggressive card, and it doesn't seem like it does anything to be a control card. So, like, I don't see where the niche is here, unfortunately. I'm not sure what this does. I really wanted to be excited about this when I thought that it was a card advantage engine that defended itself well, but it's not really as much of a card advantage engine as reliably if you can't just continue upticking it for card advantage. Hypothetically, this could exist in some kind of mid-range list. Like, that seems like where it's most likely to have a home, but it does not feel like it is doing much very fast, other than being a Planeswalker in play that punishes decks that have difficulty removing Planeswalkers. That seems like it. Next up, Elder Dragon War. 2 red saga with read ahead. First chapter, the Elder Dragon War deals 2 damage to each creature and each opponent. Second chapter, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Third chapter, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. This has some interesting flexibility. Board wipe and burn spell, filtering, well-statted creature, has the option to just be a 4-mana 4/4 if that's what you need. Nothing about this excels, but it does seem like it's a combination of multiple good modes that, if you do all of them together, potentially represent a little bit of card advantage. And the base case of just being a 4-mana 4/4 is okay, maybe? I don't know. This doesn't seem bad. It also doesn't necessarily seem like it has a specific niche, other than the first chapter feels like the ability that has the most direct potential utility. So I guess mostly this might be an interesting card in, like, aggro mirrors, but at that point it's kind of slow. I don't know. It doesn't seem actively bad, doesn't seem like it has any standout place where it's good either. Yeah, if 1 and 2 were flipped, I think this would be a lot stronger, and I think you would mostly plan to just read ahead to the second chapter. The fact that they are not flipped definitely does make it weaker. Temporal Firestorm, 3 red for a sorcery with kicker 1 and a white and or kicker 1 and a blue. Choose up to X creatures and or planeswalkers you control, where X is the number of times this spell was kicked. Those permanents phase out. Temporal Firestorm deals 5 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Okay, so this basically just seems like worse Burn Down the House. It's not very often that you care about protecting your own creatures in a Burn Down the House list. Certainly not for 7 mana. Burn Down the House does not rotate. Yeah, if this targeted when you kicked it, so that it only costs 6 mana to play with Hinata, that would actually be potentially interesting. But I guess potentially this is still interesting with Hinata, but I don't know that you have any reason to play Hinata in the first place right now. But yeah, Burn Down the House did not rotate, so for decks that want to be doing Burn Down the Housey stuff, I gotta imagine you should probably still just be doing Burn Down the Housey stuff. And Burn Down the House plays a lot nicer with Galvanic Iteration, if that's what you feel like doing. I wonder. There were the red Invoke decks that were playing like Burn Down the House, Flash Control nonsense previously. I assume that relied pretty heavily on having a fling combo with Body of Research. I wonder if that gets a top end in any way that can replace Body of Research that still just makes that plan plus Galvanic and having access to like infinity instant speed board wipes turn into anything. That's probably worth paying attention to. Well, I'll keep that on my mind. As it stands, yeah, not really seeing any Temporal Firestorm stuff. Next up, Chaotic Transformation. 5 and a red sorcery. Exile up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, up to 1 target enchantment, up to 1 target planeswalker, and or up to 1 target land. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card that shares a card type with it, puts that card onto the battlefield, and shuffles. What? Why does that suck? I thought this was going to be good. It costs 6 mana. This is really bad? Yeah, this seems really bad, right? Really bad? Doesn't do anything? Mostly sucks. Mostly sucks. Alright, Molten Monstrosity. 7 and a red for a 5/5 creature Hellion. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Trample. Probably not good. Almost seems interesting if it costs less mana. But like, hypothetically, if you have a 4/4, then this costs 4. That's just not good enough. Not getting there.